Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to talk about a very egregious overstep of government power that they are doing to step on everybody's Second Amendment rights. And this is this whole notion that if you use marijuana, you can't buy a gun. And I want to talk about this because someone in my live chat brought up to me that Pennsylvania has now said, oh, if you get a medical marijuana card, you have to surrender all your guns. You've lost your gun rights, which is a gross violation of your constitutional rights. And even in Florida, someone told me they saw a sign in a gun shop saying, if you are on medical marijuana, you can't buy a gun. That's a federal law, not a state law. And that whole point right there, that it's a federal law, not a state law, is what's so ridiculous. First off, let's talk about medical marijuana and marijuana in general. You know, if you're smoking the ganja, as the kids these days say, that's your choice. And to be honest, marijuana, and I don't care what other people want to say, I know a lot of people have a lot of Puritan ideas about marijuana. Marijuana is less damaging than alcohol, period. There is no scientific evidence that will tell you otherwise. I know there are a lot of companies trying to make up false information, trying to say, oh, did you know that marijuana gives you this much of this and that and blah, 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 and it can damage this and that. Yeah, alcohol does that to a 10 times greater degree. It's kind of like the people who try to make vaping seem really bad, but then forget to tell you that, oh, cigarettes are 50 times worse. So if you're going to do one, vape. But it's the cigarette companies paying for the ads, so they try to make you think vaping's as bad as smoking. Marijuana is not as bad as drinking. Not for your health, not for your behavior, not for anything. It's not as addictive as alcohol, not as damaging as alcohol, just period. But like I said, I know a lot of people have a lot of Puritan ideas about marijuana, like, it's not bad, it's not good, you're a bad person if you smoke marijuana, you'll be the hippie. You'll be a hippie, that's what you'll end up being. Not true. In fact, marijuana wasn't even looked down upon all that much in our country until the Nixon administration, when he wanted to lock up all the hippies unconstitutionally, but he was told you can't lock them up just for disagreeing with you. So he said, well, what about if we start making marijuana a really bad thing and lock them up for that? Because they all smoke marijuana. And the politicians went, that's fine. And they went with it. Here's the reality. On the 4473, it says, are you an unlawful user of marijuana, stimulants, depressants, other prescription drugs, etc.? And then they add a little caveat on there. Even if marijuana is legal in your state, it's still illegal federally, so you can't buy a gun, basically. That's not true at all. That's something the ATF put on there because Congress has decided we don't like doing our jobs, we just like making money and getting on the news. So they relegate that stuff to the ATF. The court systems, the justice system, the ATF even know that they are misusing a law in a way that is totally unconstitutional to even illegalize marijuana. They're using the same law to illegalize marijuana that they do to control a lot of gun stuff. They're saying, oh, it's interstate commerce. We're going to make it illegal for drugs to be transported across state lines. That's what they're using. They're using the ability of the government to regulate interstate commerce, which was never meant for them to be able to just carte blanche, deny people their rights. It was meant to create an equal footing between the states. But they misuse that clause all the time when it comes to gun rights and when it comes to marijuana and other drugs. I am someone that I will say right now, I'm not a drug user, unless you count, well, I don't even really take a lot of caffeine anymore. I drink coffee every now and then, but not a drug user. Well, prescription drugs at my age, it's the only thing keeping me going, I think, sometimes. But as far as recreational drugs, don't use them. Don't use marijuana. I, here in my state, can just walk over to the corner and buy marijuana. Don't have to have a card or anything like that. It's just recreational marijuana. You can buy it just like you buy cigarettes or beer. So if I wanted to use it, I'd use it. I just don't want to. I'm not looking down on people who do. I'm just not much of a drug person. I'm too much of a control freak, and I don't like being impaired. But I agree with everyone else's rights to use it. And like I said, the only way the government is justifying illegalizing marijuana is the Interstate Commerce Clause. But the Interstate Commerce Clause gives them no authority over what happens within state lines. If one state says marijuana is legal in our state, well, they're not immediately shipping it to other states. They just use it in their own state. They grow it in their own state. They use it in their own state, and they control it, tax it, whatever, inside their own state lines. If anyone transports it across state lines, well, then they're a criminal, according to the federal government. But this whole notion that the federal government has some sort of constitutional right to enforce drug laws inside of a state, that's false. Like I said, the only claim they have to legalizing marijuana is the Interstate Commerce Clause. And that does not affect what happens in your state. That's why I thought that sign that says it's not a state law, it's federal law is stupid, because the federal government has no constitutional authority to legalize marijuana inside of state lines, inside a sovereign state. So the whole law itself from the very beginning is ridiculous that the federal government even gets to say this. So this is one of the most egregious oversteps of the federal government. They do a lot of them. Illegalizing marijuana was purely political and profitable for certain corporations. That's why it was always treated badly. Originally, back in the olden days, it was treated poorly because it was too much of a competition for the lumber industry. And in more modern times, it's been treated badly because, hey, those people that I don't agree with, those hippies that don't like how I'm running the government, I want to put them in jail. But I got to think up a reason why I'm putting them in jail. That's all that was. So tolerating this for as long as we have is pretty bad. It's one of the things that needs to go away. Regardless of how you feel about marijuana, if you believe in the Second Amendment and you believe in freedom, you should know that the government has no right to tell me or anyone whether they should smoke marijuana in the state they live in or anywhere, in my opinion. It should be up to each state. And you should agree with that if you actually agree with the Constitution. Doesn't mean you have to agree with marijuana. I don't like people who drink too much. Doesn't mean I want to make alcohol illegal. I just don't respect people who drink too much. You still feel that way about people who use marijuana. You've got every right to do that. And you've got every right to not use it yourself. But you shouldn't support the government doing this. They have no constitutional power to do this. And the fact that the ATF thinks they can just write it on the form and that makes it the law, that shows another problem with our system right now. Congress has relegated all the authority to these alphabet agencies that should rest with the Congress and the courts, but instead they've given it to these agencies who just do all kinds of illegal shit and just can get away with it because people tolerate it. That needs to stop. And I'm sorry, as far as people being upset about, well, but if people can smoke marijuana, they'll do it, and because you can hardly ever tell if someone's smoking marijuana, then they'll be impaired while they're carrying a gun. I think most people are going to smoke marijuana at home. Probably not going to be carrying a gun. I think people who drink beer are probably likely to go out and drink a beer while they're carrying their gun. I don't want to make that illegal. I want to rely on that person to be responsible. And if they're not responsible, they face the consequences. But I trust someone smoking a joint, carrying a gun, more than I trust someone drinking a six-pack and carrying a gun any day of the week. I can tell you this right now. Paramedic, law enforcement, etc. Never been to very many calls where marijuana caused a violent incident. Unless two people were fighting over the last bit of marijuana. But as far as people just smoking marijuana and getting angry and doing something crazy, it's not that common. Alcohol is pretty much part of almost every domestic violence issue, call you go on. And half of the squad calls and squad runs, alcohol's involved somehow. Someone got drunk and teased a bull, something like that. So alcohol is far more dangerous than marijuana. No one cares about people having a beer on a Sunday and then still being able to buy a gun. How many people would throw a fit if the government said, if you drink alcohol, you can't exercise your First Amendment right because we can't trust you to say smart things? People wouldn't stand for that. So why would anyone stand for the government saying, if you smoke marijuana, even if it's medically prescribed by a doctor, you shouldn't be able to carry a gun? No one should stand for that, period. That should be one of our fights that's on the front burner right now. Unfortunately, it's not profitable for the big gun groups who like to make money and make deals with politicians. So it's not on the forefront because, like I said, it's not a profitable fight. But it should be one of our primary fights we're fighting right now. It's all about overreach of the government. This is one of the most egregious examples. And like I said, it's not even justifiable when you look at the facts about marijuana compared to other legal drugs and prescriptions. I would rather someone who smokes marijuana have a gun than someone who's on a medication to control their schizophrenia or their mania, whatever, who, is like two missed pills away from thinking the mailman is the devil. I would trust the guy who smokes marijuana every now and then a lot more than that, and they don't make a deal out of that. So it's just a ridiculous thing. It should be one of the biggest fights we're fighting right now. Of course, people should be able to smoke marijuana and carry a gun if it's legal in their state. If your state makes it illegal, well, that's an issue between you and your state, and I still don't think it's right, but I think the state has more authority to violate your rights than the federal government does, and I think it's more easy to fight back against the state. So I still don't agree with it, but I would think that's more of an argument there. But as far as the federal government saying that, don't matter what they write on that little 4473, it is not backed up by the law. It is not backed up by the Constitution, and no one that believes in gun rights, whether they like marijuana or not, should support it. All right, everybody, I've gone long again, so I want to take 1 second here to let people know to keep your eyes open tomorrow. I'm going to be launching a very exclusive patch. We're only going to pre-sell them, and then once we have the pre-sales, we're going to have them made, and that's all they're going to be made. I do believe it's going to be the FUD Free Zone sign in a patch form, and this patch is going to go to fund pro-gun activism. It's not going to go to me. In fact, even Gun Websites is going to fulfill the orders and everything, and we're going to fund Go Websites' trip to SHOT Show. He's always been a voice for the gun movement, never sold out. Everyone talks to me like, oh, I wish more channels hadn't sold out like you didn't. I'm like, there's lots of them that haven't. You just don't give them any attention. Gun Websites is one of them. So I want to do this to try to help fund Gun Websites activities as a real true pro-gun voice who has never sold out. So keep your eyes open for that tomorrow. Until then, I just want to say thank you to everyone for coming. I hope you come again tomorrow. Until then, I just want to remind everybody to always carry and stay safe until I see you again.